Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park 24 playthrough of the Cincinnati Reds. And if you're joining us for the first time, thank you. If you've been part of this series since the start, thank you for that also. I've definitely been really humbled by the strong response to this series so far. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet and you are watching, would sincerely appreciate it. Our goal is to get to 1,000 subscribers this year, and we are well on target to do that. So would appreciate any help you can give us in that effort. And with that, we'll get the episode going. We are at the start of August. We just passed the trade deadline, and it's been a surprisingly good year for the Reds. You can see we're 55-47, one game out in the NL Central. And we've got a game and a half lead on ending up with a wild card spot. And our goal this year, according to ownership, was just to not suck completely. So the 55-47 record is pretty good. And it's even better when I think about the way we've gotten there. We've got the number one pitching staff in the National League in terms of our starters' ERA. And right now, we're missing the four pitchers that we thought would be our top four starters. Nick Lodolo, not a serious injury, but banged up with a mild abdominal strain right now. And then we go to the injured list. And big trade acquisition during the offseason, Zach Wheeler out for 5 to 6 weeks with an elbow strain. He's already been out little over a week with that injury. At this point, it was banged up for much of the month of July. Aaron Nola, big free agent signing, out for another 5 months. Going to obviously miss the whole season with elbow ligament reconstruction surgery after an injury in spring training. And then Hunter Green, the best young pitching prospect on our staff, has been recovering from a torn flexor tendon in his elbow all season. Can see he's supposedly only 2 days away at this point, so we could at least get him to a rehab assignment, hopefully relatively soon. But the fact that we have been without Green and Nola the entire season. Wheeler's been in the lineup and in the pitching staff most of the year, but he's banged up now, and now Lodolo is hurt. And we've somehow still pieced together the number one ERA in the National League. Is just a lot of good luck, but we'll certainly take it. Tyler Stevenson, our starting catcher, is also out for about a month now. So the injuries got bad, or got worse, I guess. They were bad with Green and Nola out before the season even started, but have definitely gotten worse over the last couple of weeks, losing both Wheeler and Stevenson mid to late July. That made us a little less aggressive when we got to the trade deadline. We ended up just making a couple of trades to bring on some help for our bullpen. Brought on Clay Holmes from the Yankees to become our closer. And then we brought on Diego Castillo from the Dodgers to help our bullpen. To acquire those players, the primary assets that we gave up were first base / second baseman Jonathan India, as well as second baseman / shortstop Kevin Newman. Two pretty important players for our team, particularly last season, but we have had a lot of really good prospects down in AAA, and we decided that it made sense to get rid of, and not that, Newman and India are really old, grizzled veterans, but we ultimately thought that it made sense to get rid of both Kevin Newman and Jonathan India to bring Castillo and Clay Holmes on board. We'll see if those guys can help our bullpen over the course of the season. Castillo is going to be a free agent after this year. We do have Clay Holmes signed. If you were watching carefully at the end of our last episode, You would have noticed that I made a mistake that I just want to acknowledge here. I had been thinking we were getting the Yankees to keep 10% of his contract for the next 3 seasons. I had obviously missed out on the fact that that was an extension that they had signed him to rather than the current contract that he was on. So unfortunately, although we did get them to retain 10% of this salary, we're going to be on the hook for the full amount of Holmes' salary for the next 3 seasons. They were only going to be on 10% in my mind anyway, so it's not a huge issue, but just wanted to correct the error that I made last time, thinking that I was getting the Yankees to keep 10% of that. Just wasn't paying close attention, but certainly think that having him as a proven closer for our team the next 3 years will ultimately help us in our goal to get this team into the playoffs. For this season, with all the injuries that we've had to our pitching staff, bringing Holmes on as our closer also allows us to move our former closer, Ian Anderson, into the rotation. You can see he started 1 game for us at this point, and hopefully help our pitching staff, particularly our starting rotation, remain as effective as possible for the rest of the season. That's definitely going to be what will carry us to success if we're able to get this team into the playoffs. And certainly that's the goal. Right now, we would be in the playoffs if the season ended today. There's obviously two months left in the season, but I don't see why we can't continue to compete, especially with the fact that with those trades that we made, we've added Ellie De La Cruz, the number 14 prospect in baseball, and Matt McLean, another really good young player, right into the heart of our lineup. Think that they can hopefully provide even more offense than Newman and India were, and also be more cost-effective for us in the years to come. So excited to see what these Reds can do over the last 2 months of the season. As I mentioned, the goal is certainly to get this team into the playoffs. The minimum acceptable result is to at least finish with a winning record. We had 77 wins last year in our first season with the team, had higher expectations this year, despite the injuries and despite the fact that it's been an up and down season. Certainly want to, at a minimum, finish this year with a winning record, and we're 4 months into the season and we're a playoff team, so certainly would hope that when all is said and done, this young squad can get a little bit of playoff experience also in October. And looking at the schedule for the month of August, we're starting with 4 games against a division rival Cubs, and then a big 4-game series home against Milwaukee, one of the teams that we are vying with for the Central Division title, as well as a wild card spot, and then 3 games at the Braves to finish off the first week and a half of August. So certainly would like us to ultimately come out of those 8 divisional games with a 5-3 record, with 4 at home and 4 on the road. Don't think that's an unreasonable hope. We'll see how it goes. And the good news is we've won our first 3 games of the month of August against the Cubs, so certainly our quest to go 5-3 against the Cubs and the Brewers is a very realistic goal at this point. Obviously would love if we can get 3 wins against Milwaukee, given that we're in a real battle with them for the playoffs. Looking at the standings right now, we're on top in the Central after those 3 wins in a row against the Cubs, 5 wins in a row overall, because we took the last 2 of July against the Royals, but only half a game ahead of Milwaukee, game and a half ahead of St. Louis. So the battle for the division is still pretty intense. Unfortunately for us, we just found out that Nick Lodolo is not recovering as quickly as hoped from that mild abdominal strain. His recovery time is unknown. He's already been injured for a few days at this point, so we're going to go ahead and just be very cautious, put him on the IL retroactive to August 1st, just to ensure that we don't end up turning that into something more significant. Certainly not going to be great for the next 2 weeks with Nola and Wheeler and Green all gone, or Lodolo gone. We do have Green, who just came off of the IL, starting a rehab assignment since he's been out all year and is already fragile physically at the age of almost 25. Probably going to need to have him have a few starts down in Louisville before he's ready to go, so he's not the guy that we're going to bring up at this point, but certainly going to need another arm to get us through the next couple of weeks before hopefully both Green and Lodolo will be back. And things have gone incredibly well on the field in these first 8 games of August for the Reds. We took 3 out of 4 against the Cubs and then took 3 out of 4 against the Brewers. The only reason I'm stopping right now is that, unfortunately, we've got another injury to the pitching staff. Connor Phillips, who's the guy that we just brought up from the minors to replace Lodolo, out for 2 weeks with a herniated disc in his neck. So we're going to need to put him on the IL as well. Assuming, and pretty confident in my assumption, because I know simple math, that Hunter Green has probably only pitched in 1 game. I guess he's pitched in 2 games, but that's because for some reason we're using him as a closer down in AAA. So that's not exactly what I intended. Definitely need to start stretching him out. We did put him on a 50 pitch count. A little surprised that we're using him as a closer down there. Obviously, we won't be doing that anymore. But we'll bring up Will Warren now. Guy we picked up in a trade with the Yankees a little over a year ago. Was not good at the major league level last year. He's been a little better for us in AAA this year. Certainly looks like he's pretty close to fully developed. Might as well see what he can do to help us out the next couple of weeks. I'm guessing he may take over for Javier San Martin in the rotation. No, well, he does in a way, but we then moved Ian Anderson back out of the rotation, which I don't want to do. So we will put Javier San Martin back into the bullpen and go with Inoa, Schmidt, Wells, Anderson, and Warren as our starting rotation for at least the next week or two. And Ryan Mountcastle, who we picked up in a trade with Boston before this season, is another guy who's been a beneficiary with more playing time of Jonathan India being gone. And he was the NL Player of the Week, 600 batting average with a couple home runs for the season. He's got his batting average up to 316 with 8 homers and 177 at-bats. So another guy that I think will benefit from a little bit extra playing time with the departures of India and Newman. And unfortunately, we did lose 2 out of 3 at home against Atlanta, but still obviously a nice start to the month for our Reds. We are half a game behind St. Louis now. Doesn't look like we're going to be playing them this month. They've won 5 in a row to get past us. But we're 3.5 up on the Brewers now for second place in the division. And we're also 3.5 up on a large number of teams, the Mets, the Braves, the Dodgers, and the aforementioned Brewers for the final wild card spot. Diamondbacks still lurking there as well. So the wild card race in the National League is going to be pretty wild. And right now, our Reds are right in the middle of it. And unfortunately, we've now lost 5 in a row after getting swept by the Mets in New York. And yes, we have another pitching injury as well. Fernando Cruz, who's been a pretty good reliever for us the last couple years, torn labrum in his shoulder, out for 6 months. Hopefully we'll have him back for spring training next year. Finishes the year with a 3-1 record, 3.78 ERA with a strikeout per inning over 47 2/3 innings. not quite as good as he was a year ago, but still has been an important part of our bullpen, and just adds to the misery associated with our pitching staff this year. I think that probably means we bring up Hunter Green now. He has only started one game, and he hasn't been good down in AAA. But I think we're kind of getting to the point where he has at least pitched in 3 games down there. He went 87 pitches 4 days ago, which is a bit odd given that I had him on a 50 pitch count. I don't know that I really appreciate that having happened. We'll bump the number up to 90, and we will. We're not going to force start him in the majors, but I think he will likely end up sliding into our rotation nonetheless. But we'll bring Hunter Green up, see what the pitching staff looks like at this point. And yeah, Green still in this staff. San Martin, boy, Bell really wants to see him in the rotation, and I get it a little bit. He certainly has the stamina to start. If David Bell feels that strongly about it, I guess we can let him do it. Ian Anderson certainly hasn't been great in the 3 starts that he's had, or 4 starts that he's had at this point for us this year. We can take a quick look at his game log, and you can see since he got into the rotation, gave up 3 earned runs in 5 innings. Then he walked 1 batter and got yanked. Not really sure what went on there. 5 earned runs in 5 2/3 innings, 5 earned runs in 6 1/3 innings. So it hasn't worked out incredibly well for him. So we will move him back into the bullpen where he was pretty successful, and with Hunter Green and Rever San Martin now in the rotation, we've got 2 guys who have combined for 1 start this season that we're going to be relying on as we try to get this team into the playoffs. We're still a game and a half, or we're now a game and a half back rather than half a game back with those 5 straight losses, and we're only up 1 on the wild card now. The Mets obviously took advantage of winning 3 in a row against us to close the gap in the wild card race. So hopefully we can play better at Baltimore, although with a 69-47 record, the Orioles have the best record in all of baseball. But hopefully we can break our long losing streak against them. And unfortunately, we lost our first game against Baltimore, so we've now dropped 6 in a row. One good piece of news, though, is that Nick Lodolo is finally recovered from his injury. He wasn't gone all that long. I don't think we really need to send him down to the minors for an assignment. That'll let us put Will Warren back in Louisville, bring Lodolo back up to the staff. He will certainly be slotting in as an important starter for us, right back on top of the rotation. San Martin still in the rotation over Hunter Green. I want to see what Hunter Green can do coming off of the injury, so I am going to overrule David Bell on that decision. And it's getting kind of ugly for Cincinnati after that real nice start to the month of August with a 7-2 record over our first 9 games. We have now lost 8 in a row. We've been swept by the Orioles and the Mets in consecutive series on the road after losing our last 2 at home against Atlanta. We've got the Royals and the White Sox this upcoming week, and then we're going to finish with Detroit and St. Louis. But we are quickly dropping in the standings. We're back to 3rd in the NL Central. Obviously, losing 8 in a row will do that to you. We're only 2 out at this point, but we're now a game out in the wild card race as well. So things have really turned. When you're in a close race and you lose 8 in a row, that's bound to happen. And the injuries with the pitching staff continue. Alexis Diaz, who's had a pretty nice year for us out of the bullpen, has acromyoclavicular joint irritation. Going to be down for 2 weeks. So he's going to go onto the IL as well. I think Will Warren is probably the way to go. And it looks like we're actually getting pretty low on pitchers in Louisville. So going to find out if we've got somebody that we can promote up to Louisville as well from Double A to get a little more seasoning for one of our minor leaguers and help that depleted pitching staff in Louisville. And we finally broke our losing streak, winning 2 against the Royals, and then we took 2 out of 3 at home against the White Sox. Good that we're 4-1 in our last 5. Certainly needed that to kind of turn this month and hopefully this season around. We're going to be at Detroit and at St. Louis the next 6 nights or the next 6 games. I guess they're not all-night games since we do have a nice matinee on Wednesday in Detroit. But hopefully we can finish out the month strong. The games against St. Louis in particular are going to be important when we get back inside the division. Tied with the Brewers, a game and a half behind the Cardinals right now. And we are now tied with the Giants and the Brewers, 3-way tie for the final 2 wild card spots. So the playoff race remains very intense in the National League. Good news on the injury front. Tyler Stevenson, our starting catcher, is ready to come back. We have been starting Austin Hedges simply because of his good defense. He's hit a .194 for us, and that batting profile at this point is just brutal. So I think we're actually going to send Hedges back down to AAA, bring Tyler back up, and put him right back into the starting lineup. Hopefully will help us generate a little more offense as we try to hopefully finish the month of August. Would love to take both of those series, particularly want to take at least 2 out of 3 in that series against the Cardinals. And unfortunately, we didn't finish the month of August strong at all. We lost 2 out of 3 at Detroit, lost 2 out of 3 at St. Louis. So as September begins, we'll take a look at the standings, and we're still in second place now, but we're 4.5 back. We are alone in second place because the Brewers have started to fall apart a bit also. But we're a game out of the wild card at this point, so we definitely need a better month of September than the month of August that we had. 13-15 record. Feel like we're going to need to have a winning record in the month of September to have any chance at getting this team into the playoffs. We rank 6th in the NL in runs scored. We rank 7th in runs allowed. Our Pythagorean record is perfectly in line with our actual overall record. So gotta hope that we can take advantage of some home cooking where we've got a winning percentage of 300 points higher than it is on the road, and hopefully keep winning well and winning 2/3 of our games at home. And hopefully we can become closer to a 500 team on the road. If we're able to do that, hopefully can get this team into the playoffs. We are at September roster expansion, so we've also got the opportunity to bring up 2 players to help us at this point. Certainly hoping that the injured list works in our favor. It will shortly with Alexis Diaz, who's only 2 days away in terms of his IL time. And looks like Zach Wheeler is about a week away, so should have some help for the pitching staff coming shortly. Graham Ashcraft, a mild abdominal strain day-to-day. He honestly hasn't really been very good this year. I could definitely see us putting him on to, although I guess putting him on the IL right now doesn't really help us because Diaz isn't ready yet. But if Ashcraft is still banged up, which he probably won't be in 2 days, would potentially put him on the IL just to clear a spot, but we still could also just send him back down to AAA if we need. Will Warren has actually been really good since we brought him up with a 0.73 ERA. That's really the reason that I think Ashcraft could be in jeopardy of being the guy that's going to get sent down. But right now, as I talked about, we've got to find 2 more players to pitch on or to play on this team right now, and we will worry about Diaz and Wheeler and making room for them on the roster once that's a issue. And we did give another chance in our pitching staff to Connor Phillips, brought him back up. Not sure how long he's going to stay. Obviously, he wasn't that effective when we had him up before. And then back in April, when the season began, we signed Kike Hernandez. He's been in the minors with us all year, hit .290 with 18 homers. Don't think that a veteran like him with a lot of positional versatility is going to be the worst guy to bring up and maybe help us in our quest for a playoff spot over these last 4 to 5 weeks of the 2024 regular season. And unfortunately, we started off the month of September with another loss at the Cardinals. So the division's not over, but we're now 5.5 back into a tie with Milwaukee, and we're now a game and a half out of the wild card. So going to have to start turning things around very soon with this team. We do have games against Milwaukee this coming weekend. We've got some games against St. Louis towards the end of the month. And then in the month of October, looks like we're actually going to finish with the Braves in Pittsburgh. So no divisional rivals there, but a lot of teams that still in the battle for a playoff spot in the National League that will be playing over the next month or so. It looks like we don't have any American League games left, so it's going to be all up against National League foes here as we try to ensure that the Reds not only have a winning record for this year, but hopefully still can sneak into the playoffs. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem like there's going to be a happy ending to this season for the Reds. We did take 2 out of 3 against Pittsburgh, but then we were swept on the road against the Brewers. That's definitely huge blow to our chances for both the division and the wild card. We're now 6.5 behind in the division, 3rd place, 2 games behind the Brewers. And we're now also 2 behind for the wild card. So certainly getting swept by the Brewers was a big loss for this team. Zach Wheeler is ready to come back. We are going to give him 1 start down in AAA just to let him shake the rust off. He's been out for 6 weeks or so at this point. I think over 6 weeks, actually, closer to 7. So as much as I'd love to rush him back, I think I'd rather put him in a position where we're going to get maybe 3 really good games out of him rather than 4 so-so games. If we end up missing the playoffs by 1 game and he's brilliant in his 1 start in Louisville, we may end up regretting it, but I think it's the right decision. And Zach Wheeler was solid in his 1 start that we're going to give him in Louisville. You can see he went 109 pitches yesterday. Probably should have put him on a pitch count. I think that the AI is very aggressive with players coming off of injuries, but I could have controlled that. But he did go 7 2/3 innings, struck out 9, got the W. Fortunately, we have won the first 2 games of our series against Arizona. So hopefully we'll have Wheeler back to potentially start last game against Colorado, or more likely probably the first game against San Francisco. Although I guess now he'll probably be pitching in the Colorado series. So we will have Wheels back very shortly, hopefully. And we've got allegedly great news that, or allegedly good news, to be fair, that Aaron Nola is making great progress recovering from his injury, that elbow ligament reconstructive surgery. He'll be back in 8 to 9 weeks. So I don't know that I'm really supposed to be excited that he's going to be back in late November, couple of months after the season ends, rather than sometime in December or January. But maybe that will mean that, hopefully, it'll mean that at least his ratings and his stuff don't take a big hit. Would love it if he came back with normal injury proneness, but at the age of 31, after that major injury, it's not going to shock me if he ends up being fragile, given that he's only in the first year of a $155 million contract with us. Obviously, it's going to be critical for the medium-term success of this Reds team that he comes back as close to what we thought we were getting when we signed him to that big free agent deal. Week is going really well, though. We ended up capping off the sweep against Arizona, and we've won the first 3 of the series against Colorado. So that's been really good. We're still in third place, 5 games back, but we are in the final wild card spot at this point. You can see that sweep of the Diamondbacks was very important to us. Braves and Phillies, one of those teams would end up winning the division, which is why, even though we're the 4th team listed in the wild card, we do have that 3rd wild card spot at this point with 6 wins in a row. Obviously would love to take care of business against Colorado, sweep a 2nd consecutive series, and potentially to help us do it is going to be Wheeler. He last pitched 5 days ago, so we are going to make a decision necessary to get him back onto the roster. Does look like Ellie De La Cruz is banged up, bruised wrist, minimal impact, not that big an issue. Youngster hitting .325 with 5 homers and 117 at-bats since we brought him up, so certainly doing a nice job for us thus far. And Wheeler's going to be fronting our pitching staff now, 7-7 on the year with a 3.05 ERA. Lodolo, Inoa, Schmidt, and Wells are going to be who we're going to go with the rest of the way. Actually, that's not true. I'm not happy with what Schmidt's done for us. And Hunter Green has actually been decent so far with a 4.44 ERA. The record's only 1-3, but feel like he's got a little more upside than Clark Schmidt at this point. So we are going to overrule David Bell here as we try to see if we can sneak this Reds team into the playoffs. And the good news is we did get the 8-3 win against Colorado to sweep the series. Bad news is Wheeler was injured while pitching. 3 earned runs, 7 hits, and a walk over 4 2/3 innings, so he certainly wasn't great. The only positive thing is it seems like it's pretty moderate impact, back tightness, only 3 days. So given that he just started today, hopefully he will be back on target to take his next spot in the rotation. Looking at the standings at this point, we're in second now, 4 games back. And we are up half a game in the wild card race, so definitely hoping that we can keep the momentum going with this team. Take a look at our schedule for the next week, and we've got the Giants and then the Rockies again. So we know the Rockies are not the worst team to have on the schedule as a last place team. The Giants in 72-70. 3.5 behind us for the wild card, so certainly it's going to be important that we keep the Giants behind us in the standings with a 2-8 record over their last 10. They've definitely been struggling. As we get closer to the end of the season, too, check in on Jared Kelenic, hitting .289, 34 homers, 105 ribbies. You can see he's 3rd in the NL in homers, 3rd in ribbies, 2nd in OPS. Definitely could be a guy who's getting some MVP votes for us at the end of this year. Lodolo having a real nice year, 3rd in ERA, tied for the league lead in wins, leading the league in strikeouts. So honestly, outside chance here with a few starts to go that Nick Lodolo could end up with a pitching triple crown. Certainly going to be difficult for him to make up .30 in the ERA race on Max Fried and also get by Andrew Painter. But he's got a chance. Would love to see him do it. And unfortunately, we just had about as bad a week as we possibly could have. We were swept on the road by both the Giants and the Rockies. So the record with 12 games to go stands at 77 and 73. So we've won as many games as we did a year ago, which is something, but certainly it's been a very streaky month for us. We're now 6.5 back in the division after losing 6 in a row. We're still somehow tied for the wild card spot. It looks like the Phillies have lost 4 in a row. And then after the Giants had that big series against us, they've lost 4 in a row. So we are tied for the final wild card spot at this point. So we still have our destiny in our control, certainly not in the division. Big games against St. Louis and the Giants at home. Obviously, I don't think we're going to win the division, being 6.5 back with 12 to go, but certainly going to need to sweep St. Louis to have any chance at the division. And then the Giants are a game and a half behind us for that final wild card spot. So 2 pretty critical series coming up here as we prepare to get to the end of September. And unfortunately, we lost 2 out of 3 against Cincinnati, so the very dim hopes of us winning the division got even dimmer. Fortunately, though, we did sweep the Giants, so 4-2 in the 6 games to finish off the month of September. Taking a look at the standings, we're second in the division now, but 7.5 behind the Cardinals with 6 games to go. They've obviously clinched the division. We're 81 and 75, so we're 1 win away from our goal of at least having a winning record this year. We are in the wild card spot right now, only half a game up on the Brewers, who have lost 6 in a row, 2.5 up on the Giants. This final week of the season into October. As I mentioned at the beginning of September, we've got 3 at Atlanta and 3 at Pittsburgh to finish off the season. Atlanta, one of the better teams in the National League, 85 and 71. Pittsburgh, fortunately for us, is one of the worst teams in the National League. Don't love the fact that we've got to probably win 4 out of 6 games on the road to ensure ourselves a playoff spot. And obviously, we really technically need to do more than that with a magic number of 6. But my assumption is that if we go 4-2, the Braves or the Brewers probably aren't going to go 6-0 or even 5-1. Series here against Atlanta is going to be real important. We've got to get at least 1 in Atlanta, and certainly would love to get 2 out of 3, but that could be a tough task for us against a pretty strong Braves team that's got a lot of postseason experience over the last several seasons, including, of course, a World Series title. And we did get 1 win against Atlanta, but after taking the first game of the series, certainly would have hoped that we could have snuck away one of those final 2 games on the road in Georgia. So 3 games left at Pittsburgh to decide our fate. We are 82 and 77, so we have at least gotten to the point where we are going to have a winning record this year. But clearly we want more than that. We are tied with the Brewers for the final wild card spot, 3 up on the Giants. So basically we've got to do better than the Brewers. Obviously there's a chance that the Giants can tie us and the Brewers if they go 3-0 and we both go 0-3. But the main thing is to be able to take care of our business at Pittsburgh. We'll take a look at what Milwaukee has in the schedule, and they are going to be going up against the Cubs, and they are on the road also. So they're facing a 77-win Cubs team on the road. We're facing a 64-win Pittsburgh Pirates team on the road, both facing off against division rivals. So I'd say on the margin, you have to say and be honest, the schedule favors us a little bit. We've got an easier matchup. We're both on the road. Let's hope we can get the job done. And we'll sim these last 3 out, starting off against the Pirates here. Hopefully we can get a W. 3-0 win. I think Lodolo was on the mound. Yeah, wow. So that could... 1 hit, no earned runs, 2 walks over 6 innings. The ERA is 3.23, so I don't think he's going to have gotten to the point where he could win the pitching Triple Crown. But with 8 strikeouts and his 16th win of the season, definitely going to be up there in all 3 of those categories. Looks like the Brewers did lose, so we're up 1 on them with 2 games to go. Kelnick still 3rd in the National League in ribbies. Looking at Lodolo, going to lead the league in strikeouts, barring a huge game from Jesus Luzardo. Looks like Max Fried with 18 wins has gotten by him, and Fried is also going to easily win the ERA title. So Max Fried probably going to end up winning the Cy Young Award over Nick Lodolo, but Lodolo with a really nice season for us, a second really strong season in a row. He was 11-7 last year with a 2.76 ERA, 16-4 this year with a 3.23 ERA, although his WAR dropped by 2 games compared to the league-leading 5.4 figure that he had a year ago. But most importantly, we got the win in the first game of the series against the Pirates. Let's see what happens here in game number 2. 8-1 loss. We'll see what... Kelnick with a strained triceps day-to-day for 3 weeks. I mean, it's obviously the last day of the season coming up. Moderate impact on throwing, so we can probably put him in as a DH, put somebody else in the outfield. But most importantly, let's find out what Milwaukee did. And it looks like they won, so we're back in a flat-footed tie with them. The Giants are out of contention. We've got to take care of business and win. Take a look at our starting lineup here, and we are going to see if we can switch things up a bit so Kelnick won't have to throw. We want his bat still in the lineup regardless of who we're facing. Kike Hernandez probably... He's not all that proficient in left. I think we'll play Kelnick if we're playing against a righty. I don't want to totally ruin our defense. That moderate impact on throwing is certainly not optimal, to use a phrase I use quite often. Take a look at the pitching staff, and we've got Huascar Inoa, 14-11 with a 3.58 ERA, who's going to be trying to pitch us into the playoffs here in the final game of the season. And it's... we lost, but we're going to the playoffs, so I guess that means Milwaukee also lost, and it looks like we may have lost in extra innings. Oh, yeah, that's brutal. Look at this. 2-1 loss in 10 innings in what was basically a virtually must-win game. We had a 1-0 lead going into the bottom of the 9th. The Pirates team playing for nothing gets a run in the 9th and a run in the 10th to beat us. Inoa was good. Clay Holmes blew the save. Martin got the loss in relief. But I'm guessing the tiebreaker obviously must have went in our favor because I don't think they do tiebreakers anymore. Obviously can look here. Yeah, we're going to be going up against the Braves. So only 83 wins, and we snuck into the playoffs. Obviously, going to be a very tough situation for us on the road. We'll take a look at the team-by-team records. I'm assuming we must have won the season series against the Brewers to get into the playoffs. Cincinnati 7-6 against the Brewers, so that was the difference. We took the season series against Milwaukee, and we've gotten these Reds into the playoffs in our second season as general manager of the team. And honestly, given that the guy who we thought this was all going to be built around, Aaron Nola, missed the entire season, I definitely can't complain. Don't love the fact that Kelnick's banged up, but we're in the tournament. We've got a real tough road against us, as I talked about, against a very good Braves team that, if I could click properly, won 88 games. But hey, we improved by 6 games from a year ago. We got a winning record, and we got this team into the playoffs when all ownership was hoping for is that we wouldn't suck. So we definitely kind of feel like we backed in with a 2-game losing streak to end the season. And when you take a look at our team statistics, we were 500 in September, had a losing record in October. So honestly, we only had 2 winning months all season. That brilliant 18-5 mark in April when we got the season off to a great start. And then we had a 13-12 record in July. Other than that, we were 500 or, a handful of games below 500 in every other month. But that huge month of April really paid off for us. We ended up finishing up right in line with our expectations. 6th in the National League in runs scored. Ended up tied for 9th in runs allowed. And you can see the starters' ERA did start to collapse a bit there towards the end of the year. We ended up 5th in starters ERA, but 13th in bullpen ERA. So although our starters were getting worse, our bullpen was getting a little better over the final months of the season. We made a little bit of progress there. Can just check in quickly on the 2 guys we brought on board. Diego Castillo, a 3.29 ERA with 39 strikeouts and 27 1/3 innings after we brought him over for the Dodgers. And then Clay Holmes, 3-1 with 15 saves and a 2.66 ERA in 23 2/3 innings. So those guys definitely performed pretty well for us when we brought them on board. So think that they were a reasonable part of us sneaking into the playoffs. So definitely a surprising finish to the season. Felt like with some of those really brutal long losing streaks we had in August and September that it just wasn't going to work out. But by virtue of the 7-6 victory over the Brewers in our season series with our division rival, we are headed to Atlanta for the playoffs, and the Brewers are heading home. And we will find out how these playoffs go in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.